You've probably heard the term blue carbon, right? It's all that incredible carbon stored in our oceans and coasts. And we all know these places are vital. But here's the thing. To actually protect and restore them on a massive scale, good intentions just aren't enough. We need to be able to put a number on their climate value, a real, verified, trustworthy number that proves it. So that's the big question, isn't it? How do you actually do that? How do you walk into a sprawling, muddy tidal marsh or a thick mangrove forest and say, okay, this ecosystem right here is removing exactly this much carbon from the atmosphere? It's a huge challenge. I mean, these places are complex. They're always changing. Well, the answer, it's not glamorous. It's found in what is probably one of the most important documents you've never heard of. It's a super detailed, incredibly thorough rulebook. And this rulebook is what turns a nice environmental idea into a verifiable, and here's the key part, an investable asset. All right, so here's our game plan for the next few minutes. We're going to start with the amazing promise of blue carbon, then we'll tackle that huge measurement challenge. After that, we'll dive right into the rulebook itself, what it counts, how it plans for the future, and finally, we'll tie it all together to see why this is such a game changer. Okay, first up, let's talk about the blue carbon promise. We're talking about the unsung heroes of our planet, tidal wetlands. You know, mangroves, salt marshes, seagrass beds. These places are absolute powerhouses for sucking up and locking away carbon. So, how does restoring a wetland actually help fight climate change? Well, it's not just about planting more stuff that captures CO2. The real magic, the secret sauce, happens underground. These projects build up this rich carbon in the soil. They stop carbon from escaping from wetlands that are dying, and they can even cut down on other nasty greenhouse gases like methane. But that, right there, leads us to the biggest hurdle, the measurement challenge. Look, having a great idea is one thing, but turning that idea into something that can attract serious climate finance, that requires cold, hard data. And this is the multi-million-dollar question. Literally, you have to prove the benefit. But how on earth do you do that with scientific certainty in a place that's constantly in flux with tides coming in and out, storms, sea level rise? It's incredibly tricky. You need a system that's absolutely bulletproof. And that system is the rulebook. Officially, its name is Verra Methodology 0033, or just VM0033 for short. You can think of this as the global gold standard, the official instruction manual for measuring the climate impact of these projects. Now, the logic behind this rulebook is actually pretty clever. It's all about comparing two different futures. The first one is called the baseline scenario. This is basically the what if we do nothing future. It's a science-based prediction of what would happen to that wetland if the project never existed. And the second future? That's the project scenario. This is the future that happens because we stepped in and did the restoration work. It measures all the good stuff, the new carbon getting stored in plants and soil, and any other positive changes. And yeah, this lays it out perfectly. On one side, you've got the future that would have happened. On the other, the future that is happening thanks to the project. The whole point of all this complicated accounting is just to measure the real-world difference between those two paths. So it all boils down to some pretty simple math. You take the emissions from that do-nothing world, and you subtract the emissions from the world where we did the project. That difference, that's your net climate benefit. And believe me, they factor in all the tricky stuff, like making sure the carbon doesn't just leak out somewhere else, to make sure the final number is rock solid. Okay, so we get the logic. But what are people actually measuring when they're out there in the mud? Let's take a look at what actually gets counted. And this is where you really see how incredibly thorough this rulebook is. Projects have to account for every single major place carbon is stored. They call them carbon pools. So yeah, you've got the obvious stuff like trees and grasses, but you also have to measure roots, dead leaves, old logs, and, the big one, the soil itself. And this right here is the mind-blowing part about blue carbon. We all see the green plants growing on the surface, right? But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The vast majority of the carbon, we're talking 85% or more, is actually buried deep in that soggy soil. It's locked away down there, where it can stay safe for centuries, maybe even millennia. It's incredible. Oh, and get this, it's not just about CO2. To be truly credible, the rulebook makes projects account for other powerful greenhouse gases too. You don't want to fix a CO2 problem but accidentally create a methane problem, you know?
Methane is super potent. So a legit project has to measure everything to prove it's a true net win for the climate.
All right, storing carbon is great, but making sure it stays stored for a long, long time, that's the whole ballgame. A carbon credit is pretty useless if that carbon is back in the air next year. And this is where the rulebook gets really smart, by factoring in the future. Just look at this timeline. We're not talking about a 5-year project. These things are assessed over a 100-year horizon. And that baseline we talked about, the do-nothing scenario, they don't just set it and forget it. Nope. They have to reevaluate it every 10 years with the latest science to make sure the accounting stays accurate for decades. And this part is just brilliant. The rule book is so rigorous, it actually forces projects to account for climate change itself. They have to use the official IPCC data to project sea level rise, model how that's going to affect their specific wetland, and then build that into their carbon math for the next 100 years. That is some serious forward thinking.
Okay, so we've been pretty deep in the technical details. Let's pull back up and look at the big picture. Why does all this matter? Well, it's because this rulebook is the essential bridge that connects complex science to real-world climate action. I mean, the document itself says it best. This is about finally recognizing that fixing a wetland isn't just a nice thing to do for local wildlife, it is a direct, measurable, and powerful way to mitigate climate change.
And this lays out the whole pathway perfectly. It's a chain reaction. The rigorous rulebook creates something you can actually count, a carbon credit. That verification builds trust. That trust unlocks investment from carbon markets. That investment funds massive restoration projects on the ground, and those projects fight climate change and help protect coastal communities. It's that simple.
So, at the end of the day, this rulebook provides the answer to the crucial question of how. How can we reliably measure the climate benefits of this vital work? It gives us the key. So the real question that's left for all of us is, now that we have the rulebook, what's it going to take to restore our world's coastlines at the speed and scale that our planet so desperately needs?